starring Bela Day in...
But Ma, that's my favorite movie. Oh, well, all right. But don't you spend too much time in front of that TV, do you hear me? Yes, Ma. Hello, everybody. I hope today is treating you well. Welcome to my podcast, But Ma, That's My Favorite Movie. And I am your host, Bela Day. So guys, I'm so excited that we have made it to episode 40. Now, if you follow any of my social medias, you know exactly why I'm so excited. If you know the backstory, you will know exactly why I'm ecstatic for this episode specifically. I've been waiting a while to get to this place, and now that I'm here, I'm just so glad. I'm so grateful, and I just really appreciate everyone that's been sticking with me throughout this whole process. Now, to give you a little info about how this podcast works, if you are a new listener, and of course I know if you are a returning listener, that you know exactly how it goes, but I just want to provide that little context. So, first off, what we do in this podcast is we discuss / introduce movies, and we may critique them a little bit, but that's not our main niche in this particular podcast. Now, we normally have two different styles of episodes. The first style is where I have a theme, and I'll talk about two movies that has a plot that centers around the subject of that themed episode. And what I do is give an introduction of what the movie is about, and I give you details of the beginning of the movie just up until the major plot point. So there isn't any necessarily spoilers in that type of episode. Now, in the second style, I talk about a solo movie, and I'm talking about basically the whole entire movie. Now, I don't go into every single detail of every scene and every word that's said, but I generally give you an overview of what the whole movie is about. And there is actually spoilers in that type of episode. Now, I also include creative questions, and I actually rank the movie from watching it on the big screen to watching it on TV. And so those episodes are pretty fun, and it just revolves around one movie. Now, of course, we have other episodes that are in between. I have other things I'm going to be working on, but I currently introduced my extra episodes where basically I will talk about different upcoming movies that are in pre-production, movies that have been announced, just going over movies that we have heard that are coming out, and then just discussing it and giving my thoughts and opinions of what I think they'll be about, and just my commentary on that. Now, today's episode is going to be a themed episode, which is titled, But Ma, That's My Favorite 1940s Movie. Now, before I do tell you about the movies we're going to be discussing today, I wanted to let you know about our social media real quick. So, if you haven't already, go ahead and follow our social media pages that has different information about the current episodes that are out, and also will provide a sneak peek about upcoming movies where I do a little game called Guess the Theme. And pretty much I will post a visual of the images of the upcoming movies we're going to talk about. And based on those images, you can give me a prediction of what you think the next theme will be, or you can just simply guess the movies you think I'm going to be talking about. Now, we are on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. We do have a website, and that is butma.that'smyfavoritemovie.com. And on there, you get information about your host, Mua. You will see where you can listen to the podcast. You can be able to write a review actually straight on the website now, along with providing any suggestions that you have on movies or themes. So definitely check that out. All the social media handles and link to the website are in the show notes / description box below. So don't forget, I'm also still doing a contest where I'll be giving away $50 to a lucky winner who can do one of two things in order to get into the drawing. So you will get 2 entries by doing one of the 2 things. Either you tag us on social media and give us a shout out, or you can write a review on my website or on the Apple Podcast app or website. Now, if you do both of them, you will get 4 entries. If you do one of either, you only get 2. So if you want to double your chances, go ahead and do that. If you just want to risk it and, stick with your double chance, go ahead and do that as well. I'm still waiting on, just whoever's going to enter into it. So this is going to kind of be an ongoing thing. But yeah, if you want to enter into that, definitely participate in that contest. Who wouldn't want a free $50? Okay. All right, so let's get into our theme today. And normally this is the part where I kind of explain what the theme is, but it's pretty self-explanatory. We're going to be talking about movies that are straight from the decade of the 1940s. We are specifically diving into film noirs, and I'm going to provide a definition of it from the Oxford Dictionary, okay? And so this definition is this. Film noir is a style or genre of cinematographic film marked by a mood of pessimism, fatalism, and menace. The term was originally applied to American thriller or detective films made in the period 1944 through 1954, and to the work of directors such as Orson Welles, Fritz Lang, and Billy Wilder. And definitely one of those directors directed one of the movies we are going to be talking about today. So I thought it was very interesting because when I decided to pick these movies, I actually had no idea they were both in the same category, to be honest. And what's even funnier is there's another cool little fact that I'm going to get into as we talk about the movies. I'm not going to tell you now, but I didn't even realize what similarity that these 2 movies had as well. And mind you, when I picked these movies, I literally was just trying to find movies from the 40s that I had never seen before and that I wanted to see for the first time and talk about on this podcast. Yeah, I just thought it was maybe the universe talking to me when I chose these movies, and I just didn't realize how much they had in common. So, all right, let's go ahead and get into this. So, let's get into the first movie we're going to talk about today. Lights, camera, action. I was always in the kitchen. I felt as though I'd been born in the kitchen and lived there all of my life, except for the few hours it took me to get married. That quote is by the character Mildred, who is played by Joan Crawford in the movie Mildred Pierce. This movie was released October 20th, 1945, and the screenplay was written by Ranald McDougall. And I hope I'm saying that correctly because the spelling of it, I have not seen before. That was my first time seeing the spelling. So it may just be pronounced Ronald, but I'm assuming because it's an A is the second letter in the name. And so that spelling really threw me off. So yeah, it's either Ronald or Ranald. And I'm so sorry if I'm mispronouncing that. But he is the person who wrote the films The World, The Flesh and the Devil, and Cleopatra. Now, this is the interesting fact that I came across while doing a little bit of research on these movies. So, this movie was actually a novel written by James M. Cain, and he also wrote the novel The Postman Always Rings Twice and Double Indemnity. And it's crazy because I normally don't go into, the second movie already and give you any information about that. But I can't help it because literally the novelist wrote this film and the other film we're going to be talking about, which is Double Indemnity. And I thought that was super interesting and fun that the universe somehow led me to choose 2 movies that were novels by the same author. So I thought that was really cool and very interesting. All right. Then we have the director here, who the director's name is Michael Curtiz. And he also directed the films Casablanca and The Comancheros. And Casablanca is another classic that I definitely want to talk about in the future because I've never seen it before. So I thought that was very cool. All right, so let's go ahead and get into the summary of this movie. So the opening scene is a man getting shot. And once he falls, or actually right before, like right as he's collapsing to the ground, he says the name Mildred. Then we have in the next scene where we're following a woman who is walking up to a pier, and she looks upset and she looks sad and like something definitely happened to her. So she ends up walking onto the pier. She stares out at the water and she tries to step on the guardrail, and you can tell she's going to attempt to jump off the pier. A cop suddenly sees her. He like bangs his baton on the rail. Of course, that catches this woman off guard. And so he basically ends up convincing her to go home because he knows exactly what she's doing. I don't think he wants to make her more upset or sad or embarrassed or anything. So he kind of plays it off, well, if you jump, then I got to jump. And I don't feel like jumping, so I don't think you should jump. And he kind of makes it not like a joke out of it, but just he makes light of it. And so she does end up deciding to not do it, and she ends up walking away. And so she walks off the pier, and she is passing these businesses. So it's a little area off of the pier. And so as she passes one of the businesses, there's a guy looking out the window, and he taps on it to get her attention, which he does. And so he says her name. So we end up finding out her name from him, which is Mildred. Could this be the same Mildred that the man said? Because literally because this man got shot, and when he collapsed, at the very, very beginning, he goes, Mildred. So now we're seeing who this Mildred woman is. And so Mildred, the man, basically is like, hey, come inside this restaurant, with me or whatever. And you can tell that they're friendly. They know each other. They have some sort of past. And so they go into the restaurant. He mentions that he made the best investment by buying this bar. Okay. So this establishment is actually his. So they go in there and they're conversating, and you could tell he's like heavily flirting with her, and you could tell she's used to him flirting with her. Like, this is nothing new. This doesn't make her uncomfortable. It doesn't embarrass her. It doesn't flatter her. Nothing. You can tell she's so used to him doing this that it's just second nature. And so she pretty much, they have one drink, and then she tells him like, oh, I have, better liquor, at my beach house. And so he's taking this as an invitation that maybe I'm going to finally get my chance with her, because he makes it very, very obvious. And so they end up heading to the beach house, and at the beach house, they have a drink, and we do learn his name. His name is Wally. Okay. And so they go there, and Wally asks Mildred about her husband, to which she responds, he just isn't here. But we end up finding out that this is the same place where the body is, because there's a shot where we see the body laying on the floor. But of course, it's like in the shadow, so you can't really tell if you're, if you're going in for one thing in the house, you're not going to be looking around and, be able to find it. So they have a drink, they're starting to talk, and Wally is feeling a bit suspicious as to why she, has invited him over. And so he tries to put a move on her. And he does try to, at one point, lean in to kiss her. And she ends up knocking the drink out of his hand. And it's very obvious that she did it. But her reaction and the way her face looks, she makes it seem as though it was an accident. So she's like, oh, I'm sticky. I need to go change, out of my dress. And so Wally's like, okay, well, make sure you keep talking to me. And she's like, oh, I love to hear you talk or whatever. Just trying to, I guess, butter him up. And you could tell he's very Hello everyone, this is Bila Day. Sorry to interrupt this episode, but I just wanted to let you know that you were only listening to a preview. So if you would like to listen to the rest of this episode, then you can definitely go to the website, butmathat'smyfavoritemovie.com, or you can go directly to any of these platforms for the full episode. We are available on Podbean, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Radio Public, Pocket Cast, Castbox. Please don't hesitate to follow the podcast on any of those platforms so that you can be notified anytime a new episode is available. If you didn't know, our primary release day is every Thursday, but be on the lookout for bonus content as well. Now, if you've listened to the But Ma, That's My Favorite Movie podcast before, that's awesome. Thank you. I appreciate it. So if you have a friend that loves movies like we do, then definitely go ahead and share this podcast with them. And if you're a new listener and you do end up enjoying the podcast, well, then you go ahead and share with a friend too. Also, don't forget to like any of our social media pages so that you can also get updates and regular information about the podcast and about any of the episodes that are coming up. The social media sites that we have a presence on are Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And also, if you want to leave a review, whether constructive or positive, we'd appreciate that too. All right, go ahead and get over to one of the other platforms so we can finish getting into the rest of these movies.